Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking time to join us this evening as we discuss an overview of Section 504. My name is Nisha Jones, and I'm the 504 coordinator for Henrico County Public Schools. Again, we just want to thank you for joining us today, especially as there's been a rise in interest surrounding Section 504, as parents, guardians, and students are navigating a variety of decisions in regard to school and learning and the impact of disability during this time. We're hopeful that tonight we're going to be able to provide some good background information for those of you who are new to the 504 process or just interested in learning more about 504. As Alexa said, we will provide time to address questions at the end of the presentation, and we do recommend against posting any type of personally identifiable information as you comment or ask questions, because again, this is a public event and the session is being recorded for public access. Okay. So again, during the session, we're going to give background information on Section 4. So we want to address specific questions about specific circumstances. But if you do need support specific to your student or situation, please feel free to always reach out to your school administrator, or my contact information is here. Please feel free to reach out to me as well via email or the phone number listed there. So again, there's been quite an increase in interest around Section 504 over the last year, and we're hoping to be able to provide you with some general background information to hopefully answer some questions that you might have had about 504. So we'll talk about the background and purpose of Section 504, an overview of the Section 504 process. This will give you an idea of the steps that you're going to experience going through the process here in Henrico County Schools. As well, we'll go over some helpful tips to remember as you or someone you know goes through the Section 504 process. Okay. So let's start off with an overview of the background and purpose of Section 504. So what is Section 504? Section 504 is a paragraph that's actually included in the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. And that paragraph simply states that no otherwise qualified individual with a disability in the United States shall, solely by reason of his or her disability, be excluded from the participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. Okay. So while Section 504 may only be that one paragraph in the Rehabilitation Act, there's actually a lot that comes from that paragraph for students and folks with disabilities. From that regulatory language and guidance from the Office of Civil Rights, who oversees Section 504, we can see that in Section 504, the focus is on non-discrimination. So in fact, Section 504 is a civil rights law. And so when we talk about what Section 504 means for schools, it means that schools are not allowed to deny students the ability to participate in school activities or programs, or deny students the enjoyment of the benefits of school programs and activities simply because of a disability. The law and Office of Civil Rights guidance also recognizes that just because we say we're providing equal treatment and equal services, that doesn't always mean that a child with a disability will have equal opportunity to participate due to the impact of their disability. And so from that, we learned that some students eligible under Section 504 will require accommodations, or services that help to level the playing field and provide them with the equal access to their education. So now that we've talked a bit about the intent of Section 504 with non-discrimination and access to education, let's take a look at how Section 504 kind of fits in with regular education and exceptional or special education in schools. So if you take a look at the diagram here, you see 4 different sections or areas. The outside oval represents all the students who are able to attend school in your district. Okay. All of the other 3 ovals are subsets of this group of students. Now, all students are regular education students first. Okay. So each group of students in the diagram has rights and privileges of regular education, along with any additional rights that come from eligibility under Section 504 or the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Next, you'll see an oval for students with physical or mental impairments. Now, this group actually exists along with the all students oval, but we show it as separately just so that we can see the relationship. Because we do have to note that having a physical or mental impairment, even an impairment that's diagnosed by a medical doctor, does not automatically make a student Section 504 or IDEA eligible. Okay. So next we have our students who are eligible under Section 504. Of course, these are all regular education students first. So we know that they have a right to attend in the district, but they also have a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more of their major life activities. Okay. These students will receive a Section 504 plan in addition to any regular education services that are available to all students. Okay. All Section 504 eligible students receive protection from discrimination and other safeguards as well. Our final oval represents the district's exceptional or special education student population. These are students with impairments that fit in one of the recognized categories for eligibility under IDEA, such as other health impairment, autism, or specific learning disability. And because of disability, the student needs special education or related services. Now, when we compare to students eligible under Section 504, these students may experience more significant challenges related to their disability. And due to that, they need to access specially designed education in order to benefit from education. And these students have an IEP. So, as you're working with your school teams, there are several other differences between Section 504 and IDEA that you'll want to familiarize yourself with if you or your school team is considering which route is more appropriate for your student. I won't go into detail on those differences as your school team is able to help you navigate and decide and determine which is more appropriate for your student. So now we've got that basic background and intent of Section 504 with the non-discrimination and access to education. And we know kind of where it fits in with regular education and exceptional or special education. So now we'll take a look at the Henrico County Public Schools 504 process. Now, please note that as you are researching information on the Section 504 process, you will see, you might find differences in the processes from district to district, okay? Because districts are able to determine what that 504 process and what the procedures are going to look like for their individual district. Okay, so you might find some slight differences, but you're also going to see many similarities because of just the guidance that has been provided to districts from the Office of Civil Rights. Okay. So before we get into the steps of the 504 process, let's talk a little bit about the 504 team. Because as you work through each step of the 504 process, you're always going to be working with a team of individuals. Okay, 504 decisions are always team decisions. Okay, that also includes parents and guardians as well. So a 504 team must be made up of people who are knowledgeable about the student, the meaning of evaluation data. So any testing or assessments that may be done or need to be done, there has to be someone on the team who's knowledgeable about that. And also placement options available to eligible students. So with that, every 504 team will have core members like parents and guardians. There's always going to be an administrator there. The 504 case manager, who in Henrico County, those are our school counselors. They will always be in attendance, and there will always be a teacher at your student's meeting. Okay, but 504 team membership is going to look different from student to student. Okay, because teams are also going to include members based on individual student need as related to the disability. So for instance, if your student has any type of hearing impairment, we may have our teacher there who specializes in that. If we need to look at vision, we might have a vision specialist who's attending the meeting. If an impairment is more medical in nature, our school nurse will be in attendance. So your team membership will look different from student to student. It just depends on what your student's particular needs are. All right, so now here's our 504 process. We start always at our referral step of the process. So any school staff member, a parent or guardian, one of your family's healthcare providers, or another individual may refer a student to the 504 process if they believe that a student has a physical or mental impairment that could make that student eligible for Section 504. So once a school has received the referral, 504 case manager or one of the school administrators will bring together a 504 team in a referral meeting within 10 business days to review data and information on the student. Okay, that information might include teacher input, of course, parent, guardian input, information related to grades, attendance, discipline, and any other information for medical providers. The 504 team will then determine whether or not to move forward to evaluate the student's eligibility under 504. Okay. Teams have 65 business days to evaluate and get together any information that they need to make an eligibility decision. And once a student has been determined eligible, then the Section 504 team will write a Section 504 plan for the student, describing any of the accommodations and services the student needs in order to access the curriculum and activities within the school. So the Section 50 team will then meet each year to review the student's 504 plan and determine whether any updates are needed. We do that yearly, but we have to remember that parents, guardians, and our staff members can request a meeting at any time if there's a feeling that updates need to be made to the plan, okay? Or if we have new information related to the student's disability, a 504 team meeting can be convened at any time to review and update as needed. Now, the 504 team must also periodically evaluate if the student's disability continues to impact one or more major life activities. And for Henrico County schools, that happens every 3 years. Okay. So that is the entire 504 process. But now we'll take a little bit of a closer look at 2 steps in the process where we often have many questions: eligibility determination and 504 plan development. So we'll start with determining eligibility here. During the eligibility determination, the 504 team is going to use a variety of data and information to determine if a student is eligible under Section 504. So when we determine eligibility, there are 3 factors that a team must consider. Okay. First, there has to be a physical or mental impairment. Now, a physical or mental impairment can be any physiological disorder that impacts one of the body systems, neurological, respiratory, digestive, or it can be any mental or psychological disorder, such as an emotional or mental illness. Next, we have to consider is a major life activity impacted by the disability? Okay, major life activities. Those are just any acts that we do as people and any bodily function. Okay, so those are things like caring for yourself, standing, walking, breathing, communicating, thinking. Okay, this list is not exhaustive, so teams really have to consider any major life activity that may be impacted by the student's impairment. And then we have the factor of substantial limitation. Okay, is a major life activity substantially limited by the impairment? Okay. So the team will generally here look at what the average performance or function of the major life activity is and compare that to what our students' performance or function is. Okay, that team's going to look at the nature and severity of the impairment, the duration or expected duration of the impairment, and consider all of those things in their eligibility determination. Back. An important fact to remember during eligibility is that a team must answer yes to all 3 of these factors first in order for a student to be found eligible under 504. Right. So here are a few additional things to keep in mind as you or someone you know is going through the eligibility phase of the process. Okay. So a label, a disability, or not diagnosis alone does not make a student eligible under Section 504. Of course, your team is going to consider any information that is provided, any medical documentation that will be considered along with other sources when we're evaluating the student. because we have to use a variety of sources. We can't rely solely on one piece of information. Okay. And again, other sources we can use: achievement tests, observations from the teacher, input from parents and guardians, screenings, any other outside reports that you may have from other family providers. Okay. So medical diagnosis alone doesn't make a student eligible. We consider it with other pieces of information. Right? But on the other side of that, if you have concerns about your student, but you haven't had an opportunity or resources to receive a diagnosis from a family provider, please still reach out to your school and your school team about your concerns, okay? A 504 team can conduct an evaluation without a medical diagnosis if that team believes that we can use other methods to determine if a physical or mental impairment exists. So if we don't have that information, the team will typically get other staff members, such as our school psychologists, our nurses, our school social workers, or others will get involved to assist the team and provide more information, to take the place of that medical information that we may not have. So those team members will come in, they will perform observations, screenings, or they may do rating skills or some other type of assessment to give the team some additional information. Okay, so we will take all of that information into consideration. But please note, in this case, the team won't provide a diagnosis here. Okay, they'll only be identifying an impairment. Okay. Okay. So now we'll take a look at the 504 plan. So development of the 504 plan is the step in the process that follows after a student has been found eligible under Section 504. Okay. 504 plan development is where the team, including parents and guardians, discuss what a student needs to access their education due to the limits that they face because of the disability. So, yearly and as needed, the team will discuss how the student currently presents as related to their disability and what are the challenges the student experiences related to their disability. Now, we always like to use data, so any information that you all can provide as well, in what the student experiences, the team needs that as well. So the teacher will often provide a lot of input into this as well. So then the team will address any disability-related barriers to education by outlining what specific accommodations and services, okay, are needed to level the playing field for the student and make sure that they have access to their education. Okay. Any accommodations or services included in the plan are based on individual need. So we don't just look at the category of disability. So we don't just look at a student who may have ADHD and put any accommodations that we can think of in the plan. Our plans are really individualized and based on what your individual student may need. So I put a few notes here about accommodations. What's important to note about accommodations is that they're meant to level the playing field. We keep saying that these are meant to level the playing field and provide access to education not to give any type of advantage. So accommodations don't change learning expectations or expectations in any major way. Okay. And we generally see accommodations such as extended time, preferential seating sometimes. Sometimes students may need small group testing. But again, accommodations are really based on what the student needs, based on challenges or barriers that we may see them encountering. Here are a few examples of related services that you may see or your team may need to consider according to your students' needs. These are services such as speech and language, OT, occupational or physical therapy, assistive technology, things of that nature. So to end here, I just put in a few helpful tips as I've gone through the process with families and students and taught with our case managers and our team. Just a few helpful hints that may help you or someone else you may know going through the process. So, of course, as the family, the parent or guardian, you are the expert on your student, and we need that input. Okay. With you providing us the information and data that you all have, that helps the team understand how the disability shows up for your student from the family perspective, which helps us to add more personalization to the plan. The more we know, the better we can individualize that plan. We always want our plans to be as individualized as possible for the student. Along with that, participate. You know, you are a member of the 504 team at every step in the process. So really help your team as they are developing accommodations and services and determining what a student may need. Okay, think of what your student needs from the time he or she leaves your house in the morning until the end of the school day. Bring that information to your team. Also, respond to and return notices and permissions that you may receive. Generally, you will receive this information from a 504 case manager, but responding and just returning notices helps the team ensure that we can meet our timelines in order to get your student the support that they require. And we really want to do that in a timely manner, okay? So the sooner the team gets evaluation notices back signed, the sooner that they can start completing any assessments that they need to do, right? It's really about us being able to get your student the support that they need. Also, check in with your student and teachers. Your check-ins also help the team. This helps them determine if accommodations and services are appropriate. Is there something that we need to change? Is the student not using certain accommodations? What is the teacher noticing about the student and the use of their accommodations? So with you checking in, that's going to provide the team with some additional information there. Okay. And also, encourage your student to participate in the process as appropriate. Again, this is going to help with greater personalization of the plan, right? Being able to hear, for the team to be able to hear straight from the student, that can be in writing, or if your student wants to attend, feels comfortable attending, of course, that's an option as well. But the more the team can hear from the student, the more they can get an understanding of how that student is truly impacted, right? So just encourage that as appropriate. So if you're going through the process, if you need support, please feel free to contact any people of the folks on your school team, your teacher, your student's teacher. Of course, if you feel like there are more challenges and the 504 team meeting may need to be convened, reach out to your 504 case manager or school administrator. And you can also contact me as well if you need support through the process. Okay, Alexis, I think that we can be ready to take any questions.